If you have ever been in a relationship with a vulnerable narcissistic person in particular, then you already get what I'm about to talk about. While grandiose narcissistic folks definitely put themselves out there in a different way, and they want to be leaders and do stuff because it's in line with their goals and their achievement and their aspiration, which in turn gives them status and dominance, these vulnerable narcissistic folks are different. Vulnerable narcissistic people are buried under shame and often have negative moods like anxiety and sadness and anger. They often have low self-esteem, but they also have the low empathy, the oppositionality, I'm not going to do that, you can't make me, the suspiciousness, the antagonism. But a pattern that you can see in vulnerable narcissism, especially when there is that communal stuff in there, is that they'll do stuff for other people. Sometimes it's a way for them to connect. Sometimes it's a way to get attention. Sometimes it's a way to fortify a grandiose sense of themselves as a do-gooder. And then sometimes it's just because they can do the thing and someone asks them and they do it, right? But this is a dynamic that's often observed with vulnerable narcissistic parents and often narcissistic mothers. Narcissistic mothers will do stuff you don't want them to do, stuff you never asked them to do. And this stuff they do can often feel intrusive. For example, they may buy you stuff that you don't need or want. They may make you a doctor's appointment you don't want. They may think they are doing you some great favor by making a connection with a friend of theirs, a professional connection or something like that, with a friend of theirs who works in a field you're interested in, and then you're obligated to call the person, and it ended up being an utter waste of time, or even worse. They get you food you don't want. They come to your house when you are sick, when you expressly ask them to not do so you can sleep. They may do way too much decorating and preparing and stuff like for a holiday or a birthday, and none of this is stuff you want. You might have even said, please, please don't do all this. Because when you do in these relationships ask for something you want or make clear something that you really don't want, what you're going to get back in these relationships is anger, coldness, the silent treatment, passive aggression, victimhood. You may say things like, hey, please don't bring me that table for our party. Bring me that table for my new apartment. I got myself a table that matches the style of my apartment. And they may insist or tell you, give this table a chance. And you kind of get worn down by them and may agree, okay, let me just look at it just to get them off the phone or to shut them the hell up. And then when they bring the table over, despite you telling them to not do that, and you say, oh my gosh, now there's this table here. What am I supposed to do with this? I have a small apartment. I have nowhere to put it. They will look hurt and upset. And now, despite you attempting in every way possible to communicate that you didn't want this table, because now you're going to face the headache of having to get it out because you can't fit it, you now not only have the headache of a table you don't want, you are having to tend to their hurt feelings. If you have been through one of these types of relationships, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I can almost see through the screen that you're ruefully nodding at this video all the way from here. I actually think that this whole resentful, martyr, intrusive, victimized mashup can result in the avoidant relationship patterns that people who find themselves stuck in vulnerable narcissistic relationships develop. You get to the place where you're afraid to accept anything from someone for fear of how it will come back to bite you, and you sort of live in that fear. The resentful martyr is the person who does these so-called helpful things. But there are 4 big issues that arise with the resentful martyr. Number one, the things that these resentful martyrs do are not things you want, they're not things you need, and there's no attempt on their side to determine if this thing they want to do or give is actually something that would be useful. They do what they want to do. For example, they buy the thing they like for you and expect you to like it. Or they make the food they like and they bring it to you. And they may fill their fridge, they may fill your fridge with food that you won't eat. And now you feel awful about wasting all this food. They show up when it works for them. They call when it works for them. They text you all day to check on you, or send you videos or memes or articles that you are too damn busy to look at, and then ask you, did you look at it? Did you look at it? Did you look at it? Or they organize a birthday thing the way they want, but at no point in any of this are you consulted. Number two, if you don't thank them for this thing you didn't want them or need them to do, and you don't thank them the way they want to be thanked, or appreciate them, or acknowledge them effusively, publicly, ideally with a big Instagram post, or around a table full of people, and it can't be one thank you, you have to thank them a lot, or you have to acknowledge them a lot. So, for example, if you don't respond to that text or that meme, then you're in trouble. Again, even though you don't want this thing that they're doing, offering, giving. If you don't express endless gratitude about something you actually don't want, well then the martyr turns dark. Now at this juncture, because you did not express enough gratitude and thanks for something you didn't want, you may face their anger, a sort of turning of the tables, and you get called ungrateful, demanding, difficult, unkind, mean. They may give you the silent treatment or one-word answers. They may mope and act like a victim. They may even cry and tell you that you do not appreciate them. They may have a torrent of resentment and anger and hurt, and you will feel really guilty because after all, they did a nice martyr-like thing, and here you are, not appreciating the dinged-up dining table that used to hold the power tools in the garage that they wanted to get rid of, or that they take the time to stay in touch, or that they baked you cupcakes, your diabetes be damned. Number three, number three, and if you try to set it up in a better way, so basically if you play on their martyr need by telling them what you need, so then you're like, okay, if they want to do stuff, let them do the thing I need, in hopes that they will then maybe do the thing that you want or need them to do, and then you can genuinely thank them effusively because it would be helpful. Well, that's a problem too, because their martyr-like helping isn't about them being attuned to you and them offering something helpful or useful, or maybe even not doing something and giving you some space. For example, at a busy time or on a year when you decide to go on a trip with some friends for your birthday, well, that's not going to work. They are doing what they want to do. And if you make these things known, the things that you want, well, could you do this for me? Now you're the one who's demanding and bossy and needy and difficult or just unappreciative. And you tell them like, hey, you know what? So funny, but can you not send me those video texts at work? Instead of them saying, oh God, of course, you will get like, oh, you and your big job, you're so important that you can't open a text. Sorry for bothering you, big shot. And when the resentful martyr thing happens, most people feel guilty because ostensibly this person who did something, they did do something ostensibly nice. It's just not something you needed, or it may not even be nice for you. I remember a woman I know, her entire aesthetic was like this minimalism, like black, brown, beige, white in summer, maybe. She wore very tailored clothing. It was very monochromatic. It was her style, and everyone knew it. And she was telling me how she had both a narcissistic mom and the mom's sister, a narcissistic aunt. And every single year for decades, they would buy her clothes that were not only not the right size, but were festooned with ribbons and flowers and these flouncy necks. Literally the opposite of what this woman would ever wear. And the woman told me that she literally felt like she was insane. Like, what were they seeing when they saw her? Now, she did her healing work on narcissism. And after years of being mad about it, she then learned that, she's like, they were kind of more mildly narcissistic. So she didn't want to cut them out. She sort of learned to ooh and ah and thank them. She'd go home. She'd take a few pictures of herself in the clothes in different parts of her house and outside, different poses. And she would keep them to send them down the line. She would leave the tags on the clothes, and then she'd give them all to a charity shop. She said she couldn't do this, though, if she had to interact with them regularly, and she didn't. She lived some distance away from them. And the extent of her interactions, like I said, was a handful of holidays. But I thought the smart thing was she took a lot of different pictures of herself in these clothes so she could send them throughout the year. But if you have to navigate this every day, food showing up that you can't eat, or bags of old clothes, or favors you don't want, it can really get challenging as it accumulates. And you recognize that you were choosing really between two evils, two problems, either given to their madness and praise them for everything, which is not sustainable, especially if the resentful martyr keeps showing up when they want and is intrusive in your workday or is intrusive in your social circle or other important aspects of your life like your kids. And there's also a fantasy that if you were to praise them enough, that they will stop. And no. In fact, behavioral science would argue that they will do it more because they're getting rewarded. You're thanking them so much, they feel that they're great. Like, well, I'm going to keep doing this. The other path is to ask this resentful martyr to stop. And, well, that all comes down to your own appetite for victimhood, silent treatment, sullenness, passive aggression, and tears. Lots of people feel really guilty. The clothes lady said first she was angry, and then she felt guilty, and then she took advantage of the situation she was in. Like, she didn't have to see them a lot, and she just devised her plan that worked for her. But she did describe a lot of anger initially about the intrusiveness and the guilt that she felt secondary to her the resentfulness and really the manipulation. She's like, sure, maybe they're looking at me and saying, we hate your clothes, you look drab, then have the conversation. But sending things that and expecting her to wear them that weren't even the right size, that felt like a bridge too far. It's a tricky position because to an outside observer, it may seem that you have an attentive parent. And some folks may even leave you feeling icky with like, I know you don't want the table, but that sure was really nice for them to go through all that effort. And they might say something like, my parent would never do that. Or you may encounter the person who says, damn, when I'm sick, my parent doesn't even notice or doesn't even call me. Or there might be the person who says to you, wow, they call you every day? You talk every day? That must be nice to be close to your family. And yet, the conversations aren't nice. It does feel intrusive, and you have to allow yourself to identify your experience for what it is. Vulnerable narcissistic folks, when they have this communal narcissistic cherry on top, will get their validation from this sense of themselves as such a good, helpful, giving person. It's their identity. But it's just that. It's an identity. It's actually not based on attunement and empathy. It's how they want to be viewed rather than who they really are. Because the healthy version of this, of a person who wants to do acts of service or be of service, is that they ask and communicate and attune They don't just show up and start banging at the door with chicken soup that you don't need, or send you 25 texts on a day when you're in bed with the flu and get angry at how ungrateful you are for not responding to their texts, or give you stuff or assistance that you don't want. And they will hold a grudge, like forever. They will bring up the birthday 25 years ago where you didn't appreciate the sweater they gave you, or that you only wore it once. They will remind you that 9 months ago you didn't respond to their text, despite them taking care of you when you had COVID. For people who are so damned inattentive and can't remember to pick up milk from the grocery store when you ask them 3 times, it is fascinating how long people with these personality styles can hold grudges for a really long time. The whole concept of being a martyr is that martyrs aren't really supposed to be a thing among the living. My understanding is that to really be a martyr, you have to have already been gone from this earthly existence. And maybe that's the thing. The simultaneously grandiose but neurotic need to be viewed as a living sort of savior, helper, greatest person ever, and then pouting when they aren't viewed that way, dead or alive. Not only is that not being a martyr, it's manipulative. And that manipulation can cause incredible distress for people who are in these relationships, who get buried under the guilt, the grief, the obligation, the exhaustion, the self-blame, the sort of feeling like a bad person of it all, while simultaneously having the world often looking at you as either fortunate or ungrateful because you are complaining about all of this martyry stuff. And you end up perhaps with a lot of mismatched furniture, spoiled food, unwanted text messages, interrupted days, clothes that don't fit, and trips to the charity shop. At least, though, someone out there is going to like that sweater they gave you and snap it up at a bargain price. Thanks again.